welcome to Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. Today I'm joined by the COO of cancer diagnostics company Cyted, Neha Goel. Neha, hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Lee.
Neha, could you give our listeners an overview of Cyted and the problem that you guys are addressing with the company mission?
Yeah, sure. Cyted is a company working on early cancer diagnostics. We focused on diagnosis of upper GI cancers and looking at ways to change and improve this particular pathway. There are multiple cancers associated with upper GI. The one that's most prevalent in the Western world is the esophageal adenocarcinoma, which is our current focus. What's interesting about this cancer is oftentimes it has a precursor condition called the Barrett's esophagus, which can lead to the esophageal adenocarcinoma in the future if untreated or not monitored well. And again, another interesting point is Barrett's esophagus in itself is developed, mostly developed in patients with long-term heartburn symptoms. So what we do with our technology, which I'll come to in a minute, is we are able to proactively find patients who have long-term heartburn, screen them to look at if there is the precursor condition of Barrett's esophagus present in them. If yes, they can be put in the right Barrett's esophagus pathway for surveillance and monitoring of their esophageal health. And what the other thing we can do with our technology is those patients who already have the condition of Barrett's esophagus can be monitored to see if they are developing symptoms of the cancer itself. So we have two different patient cohorts, so to speak. One of the naive patient who have been on long-term PPIs, over-the-counter medicines for heartburn, and also patients who are already diagnosed with the precursor condition of Barrett's esophagus. So the technology in itself, the standard of care currently for this technology is endoscopy, which, as most of you will know, is quite an invasive process.
Yeah.
It can be quite uncomfortable for the patient. There is sometimes sedation required if the patient opts for it. It requires a much complex infrastructure, higher skilled clinicians and nurses to carry out the procedure. And the turnaround time of the results itself can be very, very long, sometimes leading to up to 6 months of getting the diagnostic
Really?
an endoscopy. With the technology that we have, which is a very simple capsule sponge-based test, the patient can go into the clinic. It can be at the secondary care or in the primary care at your GP. It's a very, very simple capsule, which encapsulates a sponge that's held with a very strong thread. You take the capsule in as you do with water, any vitamin pill size capsule. If I'm honest, my omega-3 capsules are bigger than the capsule that you would have to swallow for this test.
Okay.
So that it takes about 7 minutes to go all the way down your esophagus. And then the nurse pulls out the capsule, which has now dissolved into your stomach. The nurse will pull out the sponge, which is still attached to the thread. And what that sponge does on its way out is takes a full scraping, a sweep of your esophagus, collecting all the cells that give us the information required to carry out further analysis. So once the nurse has taken that sample, she puts it in a pot and sends it to our laboratory for further analysis. Once the sample arrives in the lab, it goes through multiple different biomarker analysis, which is then converted into a very simple diagnostic report that the clinician receives on their side, which allows them to take the necessary steps depending on what the findings were based on the biomarker analysis. So it simplifies the whole process. Patient gets their results within 2 to 3 weeks. So it's basically making a complex pathway as it stands currently into something that's very simple for both patients as well as the users of the test to administer, and bringing testing closer to patient. That's what we do.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that overview. So to summarize, the traditional method of this takes 6 months.
Well,
Endoscopy can take 6 months. You guys are saying that you can do a less invasive version in 2 to 3 weeks, did you say?
That's correct.
So, if from that time, let's say month 1 to potentially 6, if that person had potentially got cancer, surely that could have increased, moved around, spread in that time. So you guys are directly, saving lives with this technology.
That is correct. And also, one of the very interesting things about esophageal cancer, which I learned as I embarked on this journey, is most of the cancers are presented at very late stage. And one of the reasons for this is because the conditions for this is, heartburn and long-term PPI medication. People try to self-manage this, and it can be quite late by the time you come to the realization.
I can imagine. So you moved there back in 2020. So you've been there, what, 3.5 years, maybe? What inspired you to move to the business?
Well, very interestingly, my background is in point of care diagnostics, so very close to what we currently do. But my expertise is in infectious diseases, which is a very different world. It's all science to the layman, but if you're in the thick of it, they are very, very different worlds. Majority of my career, I've worked on diseases like HIV. When COVID hit the country, we were one of the first to roll out a point-of-care diagnostic test across the NHS. And while all that madness was going on, and I was deep into the COVID world, I chanced upon a conversation with the CEO of Cyted, and having those conversations and learning about, I started reading more about the cancer itself, what the company was aspiring to do. And the most interesting thing for me was I had all these skills that I had developed over the last 12 years, but they were all being used in the same environment. I did not know for myself how much of that would be transferable to the outside world. This felt like a very, very interesting opportunity because it gave me the opportunity to use the skills that I thought I had, but in a very, very different setting. Which was the challenging part, which was the bit that excited me. I get to learn about a new world. I get to learn about a new science, so to speak. But at the same time, I had the comfort of knowledge and experience to know that I would be able to sail through this journey and hopefully bring in some support that the company was looking for at the time. So that was, I think, the most interesting part of me. The more I went into the world of esophageal cancer and how it is the current condition, it felt very similar to what I was doing in the resource limited setting, so to speak. One of the most exciting things about diagnostic technology, especially when you're trying to simplify it, is you make it simple for the patient. You make it simple for the user, but in return, you take up all the complexities of that test as the developer and the manufacturer. And that is very, very exciting to put something incredibly simple in front of someone, but going through that journey of extreme complexity to make it simple is what I wake up for every morning. So if you ask me,
amazing.
That's probably it. So.
And look, it seems like it's been a great career move as well. The company's been a huge success. I think you've grown to over 60 heads in 3 years, which is, phenomenal headcount growth. But as with all startups, it's never plain sailing, right? There's always some challenges. There's always some bumps in the road. Could you just give our listeners a bit of an overview of the biggest challenges that you've had to come and how you've perhaps navigated them?
So interestingly, Cyted, our first seed funding came through around April 2020. I started very soon after in the first round of recruitment, so to speak. If all of us remember April 2020, this is when COVID became the talk of the town and stayed with us for many years after that, actually. So interestingly, Cyted is a COVID baby. And we went from wanting to be a very, a young startup with very young, fresh minds doing lots of interesting things to being locked behind our rooms and building a company at the same time. So that COVID was very challenging for us.
I can imagine.
For a very young company, recruiting young people, a lot of us being, well, I say us, but a lot of people we were recruiting it was their first time role jobs. So it was building the team. We went through an acquisition during that time. So building that relationship with the company, growing that laboratory, developing the entire service that we were going to use for the capsule sponge technology was very, very challenging to do through a period of multiple lockdowns. Although I have to say, as hard, and I'm putting COVID as one of the biggest challenges here, but COVID is also what accelerated us our growth as a company, because what happened with the lockdowns was the endoscopy backlogs in the secondary care in the hospitals started to grow and grow and grow because there was only minimal services being carried out in those settings. And this being such a simple test to administer, being minimally invasive, secondary care trusts and hospitals, NHS England decided to do a rollout of the technology across 80 hospitals over the period of the COVID phase. And we developed our entire service in that period, and it just ramped our growth way, way faster than we ever expected. So instead of crawling or walking, we were running already within a year of our being. So COVID has done both challenging and very, very important milestones in the company itself, I would say.
Okay. Thanks for that. So just going back to the product itself, of course, the effectiveness and the accuracy is complete, front and center when it comes to importance. What do you guys use in terms of, how to measure those metrics to measure its effectiveness?
That's a very, very, very good question, Lee. One of the things that is most exciting about Cyted, I would say, is we are quite multifaceted. So we have medical device now, the capsule sponge technology that we develop and manufacture ourselves. We have a fully accredited laboratory that produces all of the diagnostic test results. We also have a integrated technology team that helps us support all of the internal data part of the business. And for the size of the company and for the age of the company, we are very, very heavily regulated. So we have multiple ISO accreditations that we work with, 13485 for medical devices, 15189 for laboratory services, and 27001 for information governance and data protection side. So we are a highly regulated environment. We are constantly being audited by external certification bodies. We take quality very seriously. It is at the heart of everything we do. As you'll be aware, any medical device, before it can come into the market, has to go through extremely rigorous verification and validation testing, and for it to be approved for clinical use. So making sure we are meeting all of the industry requirements, we are using the best standards to comply by, and also using the best certification bodies to, keep track of us or monitor us. So we are constantly striving to be absolutely best when it comes to quality. we also have been very lucky because there has been a lot of external independent evaluations that are being carried out as on the test itself, on the service and the diagnostic results that are being issued as part of the national pilots that we are part of with NHS England and Scotland. So all of this independent evaluation data gives us a complete 360-degree overview of how the test is performing. We have very, very close trending and monitoring processes within the business where we are constantly looking at the data. We are constantly monitoring trends, actively auditing the results that we get and reaching out to sites whenever we find something that could need further intervention. We also have a very comprehensive pathologist training and nurse training program. So the nurses who are providing the training to carry out the test, pathologists who are doing the diagnostic reporting for the tests, they all go through a very, very comprehensive training program internally, which is managed by super trainers or lead consultant pathologists from various different trusts, and we keep it all very centralized. There is a huge focus on quality assurance and quality control within the business. So every step of the way, I would say there is very, very close controls and monitoring that happens to ensure that, everything that we put out to the customer, whether it's the technology itself or a diagnostic report, it's of incredible quality and value to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It must be so reassuring for the customer as well to know that you go through all of those processes to give them the most accurate and effective results. Fantastic. Thanks for that. So Neha, lastly then, what's next for Cyted? You and I spoke before the show, and I think a couple of months ago, we spoke initially, and you said there's so much has gone on in that time. So can you share any exciting developments or projects that are happening at the moment?
Absolutely. As I told you earlier, this has been an absolute landmark year for Cyted. Every year we feel like this it couldn't get better, and it just keeps getting better. So this year we've launched our own capsule sponge device, which has been absolutely incredible. It is already, we literally got the approval early June, and it's being rolled out across NHS as we speak. There is new sites being trained, there are new users. So it's absolutely exhilarating to see all that momentum with the new product as well. And having our own capsule sponge test, it complements our R&D pipeline really, really well. The R&D pipeline is very exciting. As I mentioned earlier, what is interesting about the capsule sponge testing is we take a sweep of the entire esophagus, unlike endoscopy, where you have very targeted focal biopsies that are taken. So what happens with the capsule sponge testing is because you have this entire sort of collection of cells in there, it allows us to look very, very deeply into various different aspects. It could be different kinds of cancers, as we're doing right now, but it also allows us to venture into a space of further diagnosis and risk stratification of other diseases and other infections that are related to the esophagus. So currently our focus is upper GI, and this is going to grow in that space, but the same thing can be translated to other cancers and lower GI, for example. It's very, very, you can expand the menu very easily on this. But the one thing that I'm looking forward to the most this year is geographical expansion. We're looking to finally venture outside of the UK in the coming months, very, very soon, with both USA and Europe on the horizon. Lots of interesting talks happening on that front. So yeah, I think this year is going to be even more exciting, as if the first half of the year wasn't exciting enough. But, really looking forward to taking this forward. It is so honestly, for a company that's 3 years old, the achievements we've had over the last 3 years, be it building our laboratory facilities, growing that to incredible scales, developing our own technology, and now looking at moving outside of home space is all very, very exciting.
And congratulations, I think, are in order for that as well, because it's some achievement, you know, like 3 years in, it's incredible, really. So then, really, thank you so much. It's been really insightful. It's all we've got time for. But hopefully the listeners have got a really good overview of what you guys are have accomplished so far, what you're doing now, and you know, the exciting things that's going to be happening at Cyted moving forward. So Neha, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Pleasure talking to you, as always.
Yeah, and you. And guys, if you have enjoyed the content today, make sure to give us a like, a share, a comment, help the algorithm there. This has been Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. Thanks.